Hi there, welcome back to the Equity Trust Virtual Classroom. My name is John Bones. In this segment, we're going to cover the specific guidelines on titling of your investments with your self-directed IRA, inherited IRA, solo 401k, HSA, or Coverdell Education Savings Account. Now, it's really mission critical that you initiate the investment documents appropriately with the appropriate IRA titling. So you want to make sure that you pay very special close attention and watch this entire training before you start initiating any investment documentation. All too often do I find folks fall into the pitfalls of completing documentation improperly, and then they have to go back and correct those documents, or in some instances, they create significant delays or even miss out on an opportunity. I'll give you one example with real estate. When you execute on a real estate contract, you have to make sure it's in the name of your IRA. And if you put the property under contract in your personal name or an LLC or another entity that's not part of your IRA, but it's a separate entity for you, in that circumstance, you will have to go back to the seller and have a new contract drafted and executed upon, or you'll have to amend that existing contract to now reflect your IRA. You cannot assign a real estate purchase contract to an IRA from yourself personally to your IRA. That would be considered a prohibited transaction. So you have to make sure you get this done properly from the very beginning. Now, we're going to cover not just real estate, but what if you're investing in a privately held company? So what if you're filling out a subscription agreement? Maybe you are filling out a stock purchase agreement to invest in a privately held corporation. Maybe you are filling out a joinder agreement, or you are inserting the titling for the investor on an operating agreement if you're investing in an LLC, or a limited partnership agreement if it's a limited partnership. So if you're investing in a company, a privately held company, we're going to cover that. Make sure you have the specific IRA titling. Or if you are investing in a convertible note, so maybe your investment in a company is more of a debt instrument than an equity type instrument. In that instance, you're going to use the same titling and the same process. Or what about a SAFE agreement? If you're investing in a SAFE agreement or any other agreement or trust agreement or documentation, you're going to use this same IRA titling. I'll also cover solo 401k and inherited IRAs. All right, so let's jump in here. When you're initiating a purchase contract, subscription agreement, as far as signing of documentation, you can sign on behalf of your IRA. Now, if you have a title company or an investment sponsor that's asking Equity Trust to sign, there are a couple of mechanisms which you can take advantage of. A, we can generate a letter on our letterhead that provides you the authorization to sign. So you can give that to your title company, or you can give that to the investment sponsor so that they can see that, okay, Equity Trust is giving you authorization to sign on behalf of your IRA. So you just want to reach out to Equity Trust and we can generate that letter for you. Secondarily, if you did in fact need Equity Trust to sign, you would need to sign first and then provide the documentation to Equity Trust with a direction of investment form, and then Equity Trust would sign as well as custodian and send the documents to wherever you instruct us to send those documents to via the direction of investment form. All right, so titling is really important, again, from the very beginning. How do you title the agreements and documentation if you're using your traditional IRA, so tax-deferred IRA? Equity Trust Company Custodian, FBO, for benefit of your legal name as it appears on your account, or your account number IRA. Now, you don't have to put both. I'll see sometimes folks will put both their name and their account number. You don't have to put both. It's just one or the other. Some people prefer to leave their name off and they just want to use their Equity Trust account number. Now, if you are using a Roth IRA or a CESA account or an HSA, you would just simply drop in at the end there, Roth IRA or Coverdell Education Savings Account. You would shorthand that CESA, or for the health savings account, HSA. Now, what if you were partnering your IRA money with your spouse's IRA, or your IRA with a child's Coverdell account, or maybe you have a traditional or Roth and you're partnering those two accounts together, for example, to buy a property, or maybe you're making a private money loan, so you're initiating a promissory note in a mortgage, and so you want to bring those accounts together in a partnership. How does that look? Well, this is what we call undivided interest titling. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you plan on buying a property for $100,000 and you're going to put in $50,000 with your IRA, and then your spouse is going to put $50,000 in with their IRA. Well, you have to make sure you title all the agreements, for instance, a purchase agreement from the very beginning, appropriately. So it'd be equity trust company, custodian, FBO, your name or account number, IRA, and then you're going to put undivided interest. So you're going to put undivided interest, and then you're going to list the percentage. So we got undivided interest. In our example, $50,000 is coming from IRA 1, $50,000 coming from IRA 2. So we have to make sure that we do the math on the percentages appropriately. It doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be 75-25. It could be 80-20. It could be 85-15. You just have to make sure you do the math and insert those percentages appropriately. So you have your first IRA, undivided interest 50%, and then you would just duplicate that. You would put and equity trust company, custodian, FBO, your name or account number, IRA, undivided interest, and then the second IRA's percentage. You might have multiple accounts, so maybe you have 3 or 4 different accounts, so you just rinse and repeat that same titling. Okay, so that's if you're going to partner multiple accounts together. Now, what if you have an inherited IRA? So an inherited IRA, the titling you'll see is a little bit different because it's not a regular IRA, if you will. It's actually an inherited IRA, and it has to be designated specifically as an inherited IRA, hence this specific titling. So here we have equity trust company, custodian, FBO, as in for benefit of, your name or account number, just like we talked about, your name as it appears on your account, or the account number, one or the other, doesn't have to be both. Benny IRA of the deceased individual DCD. So Benny IRA of the deceased individual DCD. So let's say you inherited your IRA from your father and your father's name is John Smith. So it'd be equity trust company, custodian, FBO, your name or account number, Benny IRA of John Smith DCD, which stands for decedent. So you have to, again, make sure that you have the appropriate inherited IRA titling. If you were partnering an inherited IRA with your traditional or Roth, then you would use that undivided interest titling that I showed you a moment ago. All right, last but not least, what if you have a solo 401k? If you have a solo 401k, a little bit different verbiage here, equity trust company, custodian, for the benefit of, FBO, your business's name, solo 401k plan, the trustee's name, TTEE, and then FBO for benefit of, the participant's name. So let's break this down a little bit further. Equity trust company, custodian, FBO, your business name, solo 401k plan. So whatever you have on your 401k plan here at Equity Trust, you want to make sure you have that inserted in appropriately. So let's say your business name is XYZ Company. So it'd be Equity Trust Company, Custodian, FBO, XYZ Company 401k plan. Now the trustee, most solo 401ks just have one individual. They set up the solo 401k. They are the trustee and the participant. There could be an instance where you're the trustee and you have your spouse working in the business and they're just simply a participant. In that instance, the trustee and the participant would be two separate individuals. But let's assume that it's just your solo 401k on your own. You don't have a spouse on the plan. And let's say your name is John Smith. So you'd have your business name, trustee name John Smith, TTEE, that stands for trustee, FBO for benefit of John Smith. Now, let's say that you don't have an LLC or corporation, you're just doing business as John Smith. So you're self-employed, filing as such. And let's say the plan is called the John Smith Solo 401k plan. So it'd be Equity Trust Company, Custodian, FBO, John Smith Solo 401k plan, John Smith, TTEE for trustee, FBO for benefit of John Smith. All right, so that's the Solo 401k. We covered the IRA, the HSA, the CESA, and the Inherited IRA. Now, really, really important that this titling is executed exactly. If you leave for benefit out, if you leave custodian out, if you try to abbreviate, that will inevitably create issues in processing. Therefore, it could be delays and potentially you could miss out on a transaction. And I've seen folks where they'll relay this information to a title company or a real estate agent or other individual that they're working with, and they forget or fail to add FBO or add custodian. And again, it creates significant delays. So I can't stress how important it is that you go through this and you make sure that your titling is exactly correct before you submit documentation and begin executing on these transactions. Now, the last component is what tax ID number should you be using when you're initiating investments with your self-directed IRA, Roth IRA, CESA, HSA. You want to make sure you're using the equity trust tax ID number. As you're filling out a subscription agreement or stock purchase agreement to invest in a company, or maybe it's a convertible note or SAFE agreement, when they ask for the tax ID number, you want to make sure you use the Equity Trust IRA tax ID number, which is 05-055-2743. 05-055-2743. Really important that you use this tax ID number. See, they're asking you for that tax ID number because they're going to most likely be doing some tax reporting on an annual basis. And they're going to report the income or losses to your IRA account. And so you want to make sure that the income or losses are being associated with the appropriate account, your IRA account, and not your individual Social Security number or your business's EIN. Now, there can be some exceptions to this. One exception would be with the solo 401k. Solo 401k plans, you will have your own tax ID number that would have been created when you formed the solo 401k through Equity Trust. So you can reach out to us. You should have already received paperwork with that specific tax ID number. That's the tax ID number that you'll use on your subscription agreements and your other documentation. Additionally, there are circumstances where when you use an IRA to invest in an LLC or other type of entity, that you could have unrelated business income tax and you would be required to file what's called a 990T tax return. And so when you're filing a 990T on an annual basis, you have to have a unique tax ID number associated with your specific IRA account. And if you have multiple accounts, you'd have to have a tax ID number for all of those individual accounts. In that circumstance, you can reach out to Equity Trust, contact our service group here, and we can get you in touch with the appropriate individuals to help you through that process. Or of course, you can reach out to your CPA to talk a little bit further about that. But in most instances, as you're starting off this process, completing the paperwork, with an IRA, you're going to be using this specific tax ID number, 05-055-2743. And then last but not least, I oftentimes get questions about when folks are filling out subscription agreements or stock purchase agreements, what address and contact information should they be putting within the documentation? You would want to be putting your contact information. So your address, your email, your phone number, your information. And the reason for that is because you want to make sure that all notices, capital calls, documentation, statements, everything is going to you as the individual self-directed investor. And then if you need to share any information with Equity Trust, you can do that. But you want to make sure that all that communication is flowing through you, as this is a self-directed IRA, and Equity Trust is not here to provide any tax, legal, or financial advice. So I hope that is helpful for all of you as you start preparing documentation. Keep in mind that in order to initiate your investments, you're going to be submitting all of that documentation to Equity Trust. And then per your direction, we're then going to direct funds accordingly. Until the next training video, keep leveraging compounding interest in the absence of taxation.